The mysterious encounter. Alex had never seen anything like it. The planet's surface stretched out before him, a barren wasteland of jagged rocks and twisted metal. His boots crunched on the dust as he walked, the wind howling eerily across the empty land. This was the edge of known space, a place few dared to explore. But his mission was clear: investigate any signs of life and report back to his superiors. He had been walking for hours, scanning the desolate landscape with his handheld device, when something caught his eye in the distance. A faint glow, flickering like a beacon in the dark. His heart skipped a beat. There shouldn't be anything alive here. Was it some kind of trap, a lure to pull in unwary travelers? He adjusted the strap of his weapon and cautiously moved toward the light. As he got closer, the glow grew brighter, and he saw it wasn't a light at all. It was a figure, lying motionless on the ground. "Is anyone there?" he called, stepping forward carefully. There was no response. Alex crouched beside the figure, and his breath caught in his throat as he saw what it was. A young girl, no older than 20 by the look of her, but she was no human. Her skin was a shimmering shade of silver blue, and her long flowing hair seemed to shimmer like stardust. Her eyes were closed, her body unnaturally still. But what shocked him most was the faint, glowing light emanating from her skin. He reached out a hand to check for a pulse, and the moment his fingers brushed against her skin, her body shuddered. Her eyes shot open, revealing a strange, glowing yellow color, like the light of distant stars. She gasped for breath, her chest rising and falling quickly, as if she had just awoken from a deep sleep. But something wasn't right. Her skin started to harden before his eyes. Her body was turning to stone. "What the?" Alex whispered, stepping back in shock. He watched in horror as the transformation spread from her legs, turning them to solid stone. The girl tried to move, but her body was stiffening, her movements slow and jerky. She gasped in pain, but the stone continued to climb up her body, covering her arms, her neck, her face. Alex couldn't breathe. His mind raced. He'd seen some strange things during his years in the service, but nothing like this. What was happening to her? Was she dying? And how was it even possible for someone to turn to stone like this? He couldn't just leave her here, but what could he do? His first instinct was to call for backup, but his communicator was useless in this part of the galaxy. There was no signal, no help coming. It was up to him alone. The girl's eyes, now fully stone, were wide with fear. The light from her skin was dimming, her body frozen in the process of petrification. Alex clenched his fists, frustration and helplessness filling him. He had to do something. Then something strange happened. He felt a pull, a deep, almost magnetic force. It was coming from the girl, and he couldn't explain it. He felt connected to her in a way he couldn't understand, like her life was tied to his somehow. "No," he whispered to himself, shaking his head. He was a soldier, not a healer. He didn't know how to save someone from turning into stone. But one thing was clear: if he didn't find a way to help her, she would be lost forever. Alex stood up and scanned the area. In the distance, the landscape was as barren and hostile as ever. But something was different now. He could sense it. The pull he felt from the girl was stronger, as if it was guiding him. He looked down at her once more. Her body was almost completely stone now, except for her face. Her lips barely moved, but Alex could hear her whisper, "Please, help." The words were faint, barely audible, but they drove a sense of urgency deep into his chest. He couldn't let her die. He didn't know who she was or where she came from, but that didn't matter now. She was in danger, and it was his responsibility to help. Alex made a quick decision. He gently scooped the girl into his arms, careful not to hurt her as her body remained stiff with stone. He had no idea where to go, but something inside him told him there was an answer out there somewhere, maybe in the ruins of this strange, deserted planet. As he began walking, the world around him seemed to grow darker. The once quiet winds now howled louder, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble. Was it just his imagination, or was the planet itself alive, reacting to the presence of the girl in his arms? He didn't have time to think about it. All he could focus on was the girl, the mysterious alien who had somehow crossed his path, and the impossible task he faced, finding a way to save her before she became nothing but stone. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers he couldn't even begin to comprehend. But one thing was clear: Alex would not give up on her. He couldn't. And so, the adventure began. The alien's curse. Alex moved quickly, his mind racing as he carried the alien girl through the barren landscape. The weight of her stone body was heavy, but his determination was stronger. The more he looked at her, the more he realized that saving her wasn't just a simple task. It was a mystery that seemed to go deeper than anything he had ever encountered. The distant glow he had first seen wasn't a fluke. It was a sign. There was something more to this girl, something important. But what? He had to figure it out. He stumbled upon a ruined building halfway across the planet's surface. It looked ancient, like something from another age. The stone pillars were covered in vines, and the remnants of long-forgotten technology lay scattered across the ground. It was here, he thought, that he might find some answers. He gently laid the girl on the ground, her stone form unyielding. He carefully searched the ruins, kicking aside old pieces of machinery, until he found something, a holographic device, cracked and covered in dust. He wiped it clean, and the device hummed to life, casting a faint blue glow. The hologram flickered and stabilized, revealing an alien figure, humanoid in shape, but with features Alex had never seen before. The figure spoke in a language he couldn't understand, but the words were accompanied by symbols that appeared in the air, translating the message. To the one who comes after, I leave this message. The curse of the Stoneborn is ancient, and it has claimed many lives before. Our people once lived in harmony with the stars, but that peace was shattered. The curse binds us, turning us to stone with each passing day. Only the touch of one who is brave enough to sacrifice for us can break the curse, find the source, and free us. Alex's heart pounded. The curse. The girl was one of the Stoneborn, a species cursed to turn to stone. And the only way to stop it was through some kind of sacrifice. But what did that mean? How could he possibly save her if the only way was through some kind of unimaginable cost? As the hologram faded, Alex felt a chill run down his spine. There was no time to waste. If what the message said was true, the longer the girl stayed like this, the closer she came to being lost forever. But he had no idea where to start looking for the source of the curse. Suddenly, a faint sound broke the silence. Alex stiffened, his senses on high alert. It wasn't the wind this time. It was something else. Footsteps, slow and heavy, coming closer. Alex grabbed his weapon instinctively, scanning the area. He couldn't see anything, but the noise grew louder, closer. Whatever it wasn't friendly. He turned back to the girl. Stay here, he whispered, though he knew she couldn't respond. He didn't want to leave her, but he had no choice. Whoever was coming might have answers, or they might be the reason she was cursed in the first place. As he moved toward the entrance of the ruin, he carefully peered around the corner. What he saw made his blood run cold. A group of armored figures stepped into view, their movements calculated, purposeful. They weren't human. Their dark, metallic armor glinted in the dim light, and their faces were covered with black visors, making them look like shadows from a nightmare. They moved like soldiers, but their presence sent a wave of unease through Alex. He had no idea who they were, but they looked dangerous. One of them stepped forward, his hand raised as if to signal the others to stop. The figure's voice came out in a deep mechanical tone. "We are the guardians of the Stoneborn," the voice said, echoing off the walls of the ruins. "You do not belong here." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "I'm not here to harm anyone," he said, keeping his weapon ready. "I found this girl. She's turning to stone, and I need help. What's happening to her?" The Guardian tilted his head, his black visor reflecting Alex's face. She is cursed, as are all of her kind. The Stoneborn cannot escape their fate. There is nothing you can do. Alex's mind raced. The Guardians seemed to know about the curse, but they weren't offering any solutions. What do you mean? The message I found said there's a way to stop it. You're telling me there's no hope. The Guardian stepped closer, his voice growing colder. There is no cure. The curse was placed long ago, and it cannot be undone. You waste your time. Alex's grip on his weapon tightened, but he didn't raise it. He needed answers, not conflict. But what if I'm willing to sacrifice something to save her? The message said, "The price is too high." The Guardian interrupted. "The cost of breaking the curse is more than any soul can bear. Leave now, before it's too late." Alex's thoughts raced. They didn't seem like enemies, but they weren't helping either. The girl, the Stoneborn, and this curse. They were all tied together somehow. And if he was going to save her, he had to find out how. But now he was being warned off. The Guardians turned and began to move away, leaving Alex standing there, torn between following them and finding the solution on his own. His heart told him one thing. There had to be a way to save her. He wasn't giving up. With the Guardians fading into the distance, Alex knew one thing for certain. The journey ahead was going to be far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And time was running out. A dangerous journey. The air was thick with tension as Alex stood in the ruins, watching the Guardians retreat into the shadows. The silence that followed their departure was almost suffocating. He turned back to the girl, still lying motionless on the cold stone floor, her body nearly completely turned to stone. Her once vibrant skin was now a dull gray, and her eyes, though still open, seemed lifeless. Time was slipping away, and with each passing moment, her transformation became more irreversible. Alex knelt beside her, his mind racing. He couldn't just let her die. The message said that only a sacrifice could break the curse. But what did that really mean? And why were the Guardians so determined to stop him? He couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something important. If they were right, there was nothing he could do. But Alex refused to accept that. He wasn't going to give up so easily. He looked out over the desolate landscape once more. The ruins were just the beginning. The next part of the journey would take him into the heart of this cursed planet, to a place where the curse had originated. According to the hologram, that was where he would find the key to saving her. But that place was far from safe. No one had ever come back from the heart of the planet, or so the legend said. Taking a deep breath, Alex made his decision. He had no other choice. He had to find the source of the curse and put an end to it, no matter the cost. He carefully lifted the girl into his arms again, her weight heavy but manageable. He set out toward the horizon, where the ruins of an ancient city lay hidden beneath the planet's surface. His only guide was a vague feeling in his gut. Something about the ruins felt like the right place to start. The Guardians had warned him to turn back, but Alex had never been the kind to follow orders without question, especially when it came to saving someone's life. As he walked, the landscape grew more hostile. The once dry, cracked earth was now littered with sharp rocks and strange, alien plants that seemed to writhe as if alive. The air felt thick with an unnatural energy, a presence that sent a chill through Alex's spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the barren planet. Alex's muscles ached from carrying the girl, but he refused to stop. He had to keep moving. For her, he could feel the pull of something deep within the planet, like an invisible force guiding him. It was the same pull he had felt earlier, but now it was stronger, more urgent. He was getting closer. Suddenly, a sharp screech pierced the air, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. He spun around, his weapon at the ready, but there was nothing in sight. The screeching sound echoed again, this time much closer. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and he quickly realized that the sound wasn't coming from the air. It was coming from below. Before he could react, the ground erupted, and a massive creature shot up from the earth. It was like nothing Alex had ever seen before. Its body was long and serpent-like, covered in armored scales that glinted in the fading light. Its eyes were glowing red, and its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. It hissed at Alex, ready to strike. Alex didn't hesitate. He fired his weapon, hitting the creature square in the face. But it barely flinched. The creature roared in fury, its tail whipping around with terrifying speed. Alex dove to the side just as the tail crashed into the ground where he had been standing. He rolled to his feet, narrowly avoiding another strike. The creature lunged at him again, and Alex fired another shot. This time, the creature recoiled, but it didn't back down. It was more powerful than he had anticipated, and Alex knew he couldn't take it down with his standard weapons alone. He glanced down at the girl in his arms. If he didn't defeat this creature, he wouldn't be able to continue the journey. And if he didn't continue the journey, she would die. It was as simple as that. Alex made a snap decision. He dropped to one knee and set the girl down gently, her stone body now more lifeless than ever. He couldn't afford to worry about her right now. He had to survive. He pulled out a grenade from his belt and tossed it at the creature, hoping the blast would stun it long enough for him to make his move. The grenade exploded in a brilliant flash, and the creature screeched in pain. Its body was sent flying back, crashing into the rocks. Alex didn't wait to see the outcome. He ran toward the girl, scooping her back up into his arms as the creature recovered and began to advance again. He had only moments before it attacked once more. He turned and sprinted into the rocky terrain, weaving through the rocks and crevices to avoid the creature's attacks. The ground shook with each step the creature took, but Alex didn't slow down. He had to get to the ruins. He had to get answers before it was too late. The creature followed relentlessly, its speed surprising for its massive size. Alex pushed himself harder, ignoring the pain in his legs and the exhaustion in his body. His eyes were locked on the horizon, where the ruins of an ancient city rose from the ground, half buried in sand and debris. It was his only hope. As he reached the entrance to the ruins, he glanced over his shoulder. The creature was closing in fast. He barely made it inside the safety of the ruins when the creature's roar echoed through the air. The walls shook as it stopped just short of the entrance, but it didn't follow. Alex took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He had made it, but the journey was far from over. He was no closer to finding the cure for the girl, and now there was a creature lurking outside, waiting for the right moment to strike. The ruins seemed to whisper with ancient secrets, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn deeper into something much bigger than he had ever imagined. The answers were here, hidden in the dust and ruins of this forgotten world. But would he find them in time to save her? Only time would tell. The hidden temple. Alex leaned against the cold stone walls of the ruins, his breath ragged and his body covered in sweat. The distant roar of the creature echoed through the broken city, but it didn't dare follow him into the shadows of the ancient temple. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to rest, his eyes flickering between the girl in his arms and the mysterious structure before him. The temple loomed in front of him, its towering pillars half buried beneath layers of dust and debris. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, a blend of strange alien architecture with intricate carvings and symbols etched into the stone. Despite its age, it seemed alive. The air around it hummed with an ancient energy, as though the temple itself had been waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. Alex carefully stepped forward, his senses on high alert. Something told him this was no ordinary place. The legends spoke of temples like this, hidden sanctuaries containing ancient knowledge, but also unimaginable dangers. He couldn't afford to be careless. Every move had to count if he was going to save the girl. He hesitated at the entrance, noting the eerie glow coming from within the temple's dark passage. It beckoned him, pulling him forward like a magnet. He couldn't explain why, but he felt an undeniable urge to enter. With a deep breath, he crossed the threshold, stepping into the darkness. The inside of the temple was vast, its interior dimly lit by glowing symbols that hovered in the air like faint stars. The walls were covered with more intricate carvings, symbols he didn't recognize, shapes that seemed to shift and change as he moved past them. The atmosphere was thick with a strange energy, almost suffocating. The weight of centuries pressed down on him. He set the girl down gently on a stone platform that stood in the center of the chamber. Her body was now almost entirely stone, with only her face still partially alive, though her expression was frozen in a look of terror. Alex's heart clenched as he looked at her, but he quickly refocused. He had no time for hesitation. "Stay with me," he whispered, though he knew she couldn't hear him. He reached out and touched her stone cheek, hoping that somehow his words would reach her. The glow from the walls intensified, and Alex turned to see what had caused it. At the far end of the temple, a pedestal stood, bathed in an eerie blue light. On it rested a small glowing artifact, something that seemed impossibly ancient and powerful. The artifact hummed with energy, its light flickering like a heartbeat. Alex knew this was it, the source. This was the key to breaking the curse. But as he moved toward the pedestal, the ground beneath him trembled. The temple itself seemed to react to his presence, and a deep rumble echoed through the chamber. The walls began to shift, the carvings twisting and glowing brighter. Alex's pulse quickened as he realized that the temple wasn't going to let him take the artifact easily. Suddenly, a low, gravelly voice filled the air, vibrating through the stone floor. "Who dares enter the sacred temple?" the voice boomed, echoing off the walls. "Only the worthy may touch the artifact. Many have come before you, all have failed." Alex froze. The voice sounded ancient, almost like the temple itself was alive. He scanned the chamber, but there was no one in sight. Was it a trick? Some kind of illusion? Or was there something else in this place, guarding the artifact? "I am not here to steal," Alex replied, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his chest. "I am here to save her. The girl, she is cursed. I need the artifact to help her." The voice seemed to pause, as if considering his words. The rumbling ceased, and for a moment, there was only silence. Then a new sound, a heavy mechanical scraping, came from behind him. Alex spun around just in time to see massive stone statues rise from the floor, their limbs creaking as they came to life. These were no ordinary statues. They were massive warriors, their faces cold and emotionless, their eyes glowing with the same eerie blue light as the artifact. They were the guardians, the protectors of the temple. "Only the worthy may pass," the voice repeated, now coming from the statues themselves. "Prove your worth, or leave and face the curse alongside the Stoneborn." Alex tightened his grip on his weapon, his heart racing. He had no choice now. He couldn't leave without the artifact, not when the girl's life was on the line. The first guardian lunged at him, its massive stone fist swinging with terrifying speed. Alex ducked just in time, barely avoiding the blow. The impact left a crack in the stone floor, and dust billowed into the air. The other guardians moved in, surrounding him, their movements synchronized and unnervingly precise. Alex's mind raced as he reached for his sidearm. He fired a few quick shots, but the energy blasts bounced harmlessly off the stone figures. It was clear that conventional weapons wouldn't work here. Think. Alex muttered to himself, his eyes darting around the temple for any advantage. The glowing symbols on the walls, there had to be something in them that could help him. He spotted a symbol above the pedestal that seemed different from the rest. It was a pattern of swirling lines that almost seemed to move as if alive. Without thinking, Alex sprinted toward the pedestal, ignoring the advancing guardians. As he reached for the artifact, the voice spoke again. "You are too late," it warned. "The price of power is always steep." Alex hesitated for a fraction of a second, but then his fingers wrapped around the artifact. The moment he touched it, the room shook violently, and a pulse of energy shot through his body. His vision blurred, and he staggered backward, barely able to stay on his feet. The Guardians lunged at him, but something stopped them, a force field powered by the artifact. They slammed into the invisible barrier and were thrown back, crashing to the ground. The temple was now alive, the walls groaning and shifting as if in response to the artifact's activation. Alex could feel the energy coursing through him, the weight of the artifact's power heavy in his hands, but he didn't have time to process what had just happened. He ran back to the girl, clutching the artifact tightly. The stone around her body was still there, but the glow in her eyes had returned, faint but present. She was still alive. "Hang on," Alex whispered. "I'm not giving up on you." He placed the artifact in her hands, hoping that somehow it would reverse the curse. The room hummed with energy as the artifact began to glow brighter. Slowly, the stone on her body began to crack and break apart, piece by piece, as if the curse was unraveling. But even as the stone faded, Alex felt a deep unease settle in his chest. The Guardians were still there, and the temple itself was far from finished with him. The real test was just beginning. The final test. The temple trembled once more, its walls groaning under the weight of the energy pulsing through the air. Alex could feel the immense power flowing from the artifact, but he knew it wasn't enough. The curse had only started to lift. But there was something more. A final trial awaited him. As the last of the stone crumbled from Lyra's body, her form shuddered, and for the first time in what felt like forever, her eyes fluttered open. She looked up at Alex, confusion and fear in her gaze. She was no longer stone, but the transformation had left its mark. Her breathing was shallow, her skin still faintly gray. The curse wasn't fully gone. You're alive," Alex whispered, his voice shaking with relief. He knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder, trying to steady her. "Well, what happened?" Lyra whispered, her voice weak but steady. Her eyes flickered around, taking in the ruins of the temple. "I was turning to stone. I was lost." "You're safe now," Alex said, his voice more confident than he felt. "I found the artifact. It's supposed to break the curse." But as he spoke, a deep, booming laugh filled the chamber. The voice of the temple returned, this time full of mockery. "You think you can undo what has been done?" The voice rumbled, sending chills down Alex's spine. "The curse of the Stoneborn is ancient. No mere artifact can erase it. You are mistaken." The walls around them cracked, and the statues that had once been guardians began to move again. But this time, they weren't the stone protectors. They were something else. Dark, twisted versions of the guardians, their bodies corrupted by the very curse Alex had been trying to break. "You have awakened the power of the temple," the voice continued, its tone growing darker. "But it comes with a price. The balance must be maintained. The curse must be borne by someone. If you want to save her, you must sacrifice your own life force to complete the ritual." Alex's heart stopped. A sacrifice. The final test wasn't just about saving Lyra. It was about what he was willing to give up. His life, or hers. He hadn't come this far to fail now. "No," Alex said, shaking his head. "I won't let her suffer for what happened to her. There has to be another way." The corrupted guardians advanced, their glowing eyes filled with malicious intent. "There is no other way," the voice hissed. "The ritual is complete. The price must be paid." Alex's hands trembled as he held the artifact, feeling its energy pulsating in his grip. The air around him seemed to vibrate with the weight of the decision he had to make. The guardians drew closer, their forms looming over him like shadows of doom. Lyra, still weak, managed to sit up, her eyes locking with Alex. "Please, don't sacrifice yourself for me. You've already given so much." Alex looked down at her, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He could feel the weight of the artifact's power, a constant pull on his life force. The curse, the ritual, everything led to this moment. He could feel his strength draining as the energy from the artifact surged through him, like a thread connecting his life to hers. "You saved me," Lyra continued, her voice quiet but firm. "And now, you have a choice. Live for the future. Live for what we can still do together." The words hit Alex like a shockwave. She was right. He had come this far not just for her, but for the hope of something beyond the curse, beyond this planet's dark history. But the choice, sacrifice his life or live, and let the curse take root, was unbearable. He turned toward the Guardians, their twisted forms closing in. The corrupted statue's eyes glowed brighter, and Alex knew that if he didn't act soon, they would overwhelm him. There was no way to escape them, and no way to fight the curse without paying the price. The artifact pulsed violently, as if urging him to make the decision. He felt his heart race as the energy around him grew stronger, suffocating him. This was it, the final test, the price of breaking the curse. And then, an idea struck him, a flash of clarity. Alex closed his eyes, letting the energy of the artifact flow through him. He focused on his connection to Lyra, on the bond they shared, a bond stronger than the curse, stronger than the trials they had faced. He could feel the artifact's power draining from him, but instead of letting it consume him, he sent that energy to Lyra. He would give her his life force, but not in the way the temple demanded. He would empower her, not sacrifice himself entirely. He extended his hand, holding it over her heart. "Live," he whispered, his voice trembling with exhaustion. The artifact's energy surged into Lyra, and as it did, the curse fully lifted. The remaining stone shattered from her skin, and her once gray complexion slowly returned to its vibrant, glowing hue. Her eyes widened, and the light in them was brighter than Alex had ever seen. But as the transformation completed, Alex felt himself weakening. The energy was draining from him, faster than he anticipated. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes wide with realization. "No," she cried, reaching for him. You gave everything for me. No, you can't." But Alex smiled weakly, his body faltering as the last of his strength slipped away. "I chose," he whispered. "I chose you." The world around him began to blur as his vision faded. He couldn't hold on any longer. And then, just as everything went dark, he felt a warmth, like a soft, gentle light surrounding him. He was no longer alone. The ultimate sacrifice. Alex's world was consumed by darkness. His senses faded, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he was still alive or if he had already passed on. He had given everything, his strength, his life force, to the artifact to break the curse that had nearly claimed Lyra. His vision blurred and his body felt weightless, but somewhere, deep within the void, he could feel a presence. It was warm and reassuring, a sense of peace he had never known before. He tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't form. All he could do was listen. Listen to the whisper of the wind, the sound of something, or someone, calling his name. Suddenly, the world around him shifted. He felt solid ground beneath his feet. A faint light pierced the darkness, and the whispers grew louder, clearer. "Alex." It was Lyra's voice. His heart stirred with warmth as her voice brought him back. But as his vision cleared, he realized it wasn't just her voice that had called him. It was her presence. Lyra stood before him, but she was no longer the weak, petrified alien girl. She was strong, radiant, her body glowing with energy, with life. The curse was gone. Alex opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, Lyra reached out, placing her hand on his chest. Her touch was soft, but filled with incredible power, and Alex felt the energy within her, his energy, coursing through her veins. "You're not gone," she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how to save you. But you gave me everything. You gave me life." Her voice trembled with emotion. "I won't let you die." For a moment, Alex felt a weight on his chest, something heavy and unbearable. He could feel his life slipping away, yet he didn't feel the cold, final grip of death. Instead, a new sensation filled him: warmth. Lyra's touch was healing him. He felt his body stirring, his breath returning. The energy that had drained from him was being replenished, but not just by the artifact, by Lyra herself. She was the key. The ritual had required a sacrifice, but it had been Lyra's strength, her will, that turned the sacrifice into something more. You're saving me." Alex gasped, his voice hoarse but growing stronger. Lyra nodded, a look of determination in her eyes. "I can't let you go. You gave me everything to bring me back. I'll give everything to save you." She stepped back, her hands glowing with the same energy that had surged through the artifact. It was not the power of the curse, but a new energy, one born from the bond they had shared. The curse had been broken, but it had also created something new, something more powerful. As her energy enveloped him, Alex felt his body healing, every muscle regaining strength, every ache and fatigue fading. He felt more alive than he had in a long time, his mind clearer, his senses sharper. It was as though he had been reborn, sustained by Lyra's will and his own sacrifice. The light around them began to pulse, growing brighter, almost blinding. But Alex didn't fear it. He knew that this light, this energy, was a symbol of their triumph over the curse, a sign that their bond had transcended the trials they had faced. The temple's ancient power was now their power, and it was not born of suffering or sacrifice, but of choice and hope. The guardians, those dark, corrupted statues, were no longer a threat. The energy from the artifact had purged their influence, and the temple itself seemed to settle into a calm silence. The whispers from the ancient walls faded, and for the first time, the temple seemed peaceful. The trial had ended. Lyra turned to Alex, her gaze soft yet filled with gratitude. "You saved me, Alex. But I will never forget what you gave. I will protect you for the rest of our lives." Alex smiled, though it was still faint. His body felt tired, but the strength he had given to Lyra had brought them both through this dark chapter. "You don't need to protect me," he said, his voice full of warmth. "You're the one who's stronger now." Lyra reached for his hand, her eyes locked with his. "We're stronger together." With those words, they both felt the weight of everything they had endured. But there was no fear, no lingering doubt. Together, they had defied fate, defeated the curse, and forged something new. A future built on their shared strength and sacrifice. As they stood in the temple, the sun outside began to rise, casting golden light through the broken ruins. It was the dawn of a new beginning. And for the first time, Alex felt truly at peace.